Moving on to news about the Christmas bomber on the airplane to Detroit. We have some interesting details to that story that haven't really come out in the mainstream media, have only come out in alternative media like on Prison Planet. So that leads into this story. Christmas bomber had no passport. Helped aboard plane by sharp-dressed man. This was written by Paul Joseph Watson on December 27th. A passenger who boarded Northwest Airlines Flight 253 in Amsterdam with attempted plane bomber Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalab says the would-be terrorist had no passport and was aided by a sharp-dressed man who claimed Muttalab was a Sudanese refugee. Just one of a plethora of startling inconsistencies surrounding an incident that has led to ramped-up security and increased levels of harassment in airports. According to Kurt Haskell, an attorney with the Haskell Law Firm in Taylor, Michigan, he and his wife were sitting on the ground near their boarding gate in Amsterdam, which is when they saw Muttalab approach the gate with an unidentified man. Muttalab was poorly dressed, a young-looking individual, but he was accompanied by a man in an expensive suit, Haskell told MLive.com. He says the suited man asked ticket agents whether Muttalab could board without a passport. The guy said, "He's from Sudan, and we do this all the time." Although Muttalab is Nigerian, Haskell said the well-dressed man portrayed him as a desperate Sudanese refugee in an attempt to elicit sympathy and as a way of bypassing his lack of documents. The ticket agent referred Muttalab and his companion to her manager down the hall, and Haskell didn't see Muttalab again until he allegedly tried to detonate an explosive on the plane, states the report. Crucially, Haskell said that after the plane landed, he saw another man being taken into custody by the FBI along with Muttalab. However, the FBI later said that Muttalab was the only individual taken into custody. And then a few days later, this was on Prison Planet, which they got from the Haskell family blog. They've been constant guests on the Alex Jones show. This attorney from Detroit who witnessed this also said of the story after the plane landed, and I'm going to read his blog verbatim. As many of you know, my wife Lori and I were passengers and innocent victims on Northwest Flight 253. When Flight 253 landed, the passengers were forced to stay on the plane on the runway for 20 minutes. We were forced to do this despite not knowing whether there was a further bomb on our plane held by another passenger, in a carry-on bag, or in the cargo hold. This action taken by law enforcement further endangered the lives of every passenger on Flight 253. After we were removed from the plane, all of the passengers of Flight 253 were taken to an empty baggage claim area of an airport terminal. We all had our carry-on bags with us, and we stood together for nearly 1 hour until bomb-sniffing dogs arrived. 3 dogs arrived, 1 lab and 2 German shepherds. The dogs were split up, and 1 German shepherd sat next to a bag of the man in orange, who stood 20 feet from me the entire time until he was detained. See my post yesterday for more details. This man in orange was immediately taken into a room for questioning. He was not handcuffed at this time. After approximately 1 hour, the man in orange was taken out of that room, handcuffed, and led away. At this exact time, a law enforcement person came up to the group of Flight 253 passengers and said the following, approximate quote, "You are all being moved to another area because this area is not safe. You all just saw what happened, and I'm sure you are smart enough to read between the lines and figure out what is going on." We were then escorted out of this baggage claim room and taken to a long, narrow hallway. While we were being held in this area, an FBI agent announced the following to us. We have those, plural, he stresses that when he's writing this quote, that we believe are responsible for this in custody, and we will now be doing interviews with each of you, and then you are free to go. He went on to state 2 further references to more than 1 person, which I cannot specifically quote. I have repeated this exact story hundreds of times since Flight 253. The official story regarding the man in orange has now changed numerous times. In the first version, this was the official story from December 25th, 09 to December 30th of 09. This version was that only Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalab was involved or detained. Then in version 2, after some of my fellow passengers supported my claim in media accounts, this version 2 was released and became the official story on December 30th, 2009. This version was that, yes, another man was taken into custody, but he was being held indefinitely on immigration charges. Then version 3, this version came out late in the day on December 30th, 2009. This version provided that, yes, another man was taken into custody, but he was from another flight. This story was the most ridiculous version to date and made myself write the current article on mlive.com. And then later on, the investigators sent out an email after this started circulating, and in it, the investigator writing this wrote, "As I have explained, there were no other passengers from Flight 253 arrested or detained. The eyewitness accounts coincided with a separate issue concerning a passenger from a separate flight arriving at the airport. The passenger was escorted from the arriving plane to the CBP area. He was handcuffed at that time and could have been observed by the passengers from Flight 253. This still remains true. However, I now know that a passenger from Flight 253 did have a canine alert to his carry-on baggage in the baggage area of the CPB facility. He was placed in handcuffs and escorted to an interview room where he was interviewed and searched. There was nothing found during that search. Following the negative search results, he received an explanation of why he was searched. He thanked the officers for doing their job and departed the facility along with the other passengers from Flight 253. So, basically, at first they just said it was one person detained and arrested. Then they said that that another person was picked up on immigration charges, but why did the bomb-sniffing dogs go crazy over his bag? And then they keep on changing the story. So there's more about it out there on the internet. I'll try to keep track of it on America20xy.com or go right to the big boys at Infowars.com and check it out. Now, of course, this incident is being used by the mainstream press to terrorize the public into supporting military action in Yemen, and that's going to be illustrated by this video I'm about to play of Joe Lieberman advocating preemptive military strikes in Yemen, which is really funny because those already started a few weeks ago. If you look at my last show, I began the episode with talking about how we were already at war with Yemen, is what I said. And when I say that, I don't mean war with the Yemen government, but with the faction that's fighting against the government in the civil war there. So any strikes we do now really aren't going to be preemptive. But here's Joe.
Well, I agree with Pete on this. I know the president made a promise that he'd close Guantanamo because of what it represented in world opinion. But today, it's a first-class facility. It's way above what's required by the Geneva Convention or our Constitution. It would be a mistake to send these 90 people back to Yemen because based on the past of what's happened when we've released people from Guantanamo, a certain number of them have gone back into the fight against us. Yemen now becomes one of the centers of that fight. I was in Yemen in August, and we have a growing presence there, and we have to, of special operations, Green Berets, intelligence. We're working well with the government of President Saleh there. I'll leave you with this thought that somebody in our government said to me in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. Iraq was yesterday's war. Afghanistan is today's war. If we don't act preemptively, Yemen will be tomorrow's war. That's the danger we face.